All right. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait to do the ARI with you until next week, until we're all together. So what my plan was, I have copies of the ARI and I was going to have us actually give each other the assessment, but instead I'm going to hold off on that and we'll do it next week when we're together. So we actually are going into the schools and start with our tutoring pal on February the 21st. So that's what we're going to be working on this next week, is we will be working on prepping our first tutoring day, and then we will also be looking at the ARI. So I'll have us do that next Thursday. But today what I'm going to do is, so you have in the syllabus, we have, let's see, where is it? On March 9th, so a month from today, I have your next assignments are due. You've got your action plan and your 2 lesson plans due. So I need to go ahead and talk to you today about what those are and how to fill those out. And then as a quick reminder, your journal abstracts are due next Thursday. So don't forget about that. Okay. Do we have any questions so far? Okay. Okay. All right, so in Discovery, there is a folder called Lesson Plan, Action Plan, the Summary Report. So I'm going to click on that. And remember, I know I've said this a lot, but just remember the course in Discovery is organized by like assignments and documents that we're doing. It's not by like class schedule or whatever. So I'm going to go into this and I'm going to open this up. Let me enlarge it and see if that will help anymore. Okay, so we do not do the summary report until close to the end of the semester, because as it's stated, it is a summary overall of what you've been doing the whole semester. So we're going to hold off on that. So I want to talk to us about the action plan and the lesson plan. So the action plan, here is the here is a template and the scoring guide for it. Let me see what that looks like. I don't remember. There's no scoring guide. I don't know why that says scoring guide. Okay. So the document that you're going to look at is called the action plan sample. And if you're in Discovery, you can look at it. So you're going to look at the action plan sample, and I would, if I were you, I would just download this. So I'm going to go ahead and download it, and then we can look at it a little bit better. Where did it go? Download it again. Okay, here it is. It popped up twice. Okay, so remember, what are the 3 assessments that we're giving our student? Sight words, spelling inventory, and then the ARI. Okay, so those are the 3 assessments that we're giving. So this first document is called the action plan, and basically it is what it says it is. It's a plan of action for your student. You may remember at the beginning of the semester, I talked about how this document is worded the way that I want it to be worded. All you need to do is change it to fit your student. Okay, so it's not like plagiarizing or anything like that. I actually want you to use what I have in here, but you will just go in and change it for your student. Okay, and I'm going to walk you through it. So first we have the sight word inventory. So you're going to leave everything that's here. And then for part A, it says, give a general overview of your assessment and how this will direct your instruction for the remaining sessions. So that's what we do. So in part A, we have it organized by the assessment that we do. And then I also have it in the order that you've given it, because you'll give your sight word inventory first, then your qualitative spelling inventory, and then your ARI. So the sight word inventory And how I have it organized is like the first sentence or two tells you what that assessment is. Okay. So next to sight word inventory, it says this assessment was given to determine the amount of sight words known. So what you will start changing is where the data is. So my student was able to read through grade level, and then you would change it to fit your student. Only missing 5 words title total. So again, you would go and change, like, let's say your student made it to level 1, but missed 10 words between pre-primer, primer, and level 1. You would just tell me the total amount of words that the student missed. This indicates to me that my student is able to recognize sight words way above grade level. I think this was a first or second grade student at the time. And so the student made it to level 3, which means he was above grade level. So that would indicate to me that if he's above grade level on sight words, then he doesn't need to have that as an instructional goal because he's way above, right? But let's say that your student is a first grader and only made it to the pre-primer or primer level, then what would that indicate to us?
Well, it needs like special instructions.
Right. So he needs he or she would need instruction on sight words. If they're not to their grade level, then that is automatically going to tell us that that needs to be one of their goals. Their instructional goals is that they'll work on sight word instruction because they're not at grade level. Even if they make it to grade level 1, but miss like 5 to 10 words, I would still say that they need that instruction. Does that make sense so far? Okay. But here I just say, this is not a concern to me at this time. Therefore, we will not spend instructional time focusing on learning sight words. Reading sight words appeared to be a strength for my student. You will like either delete all of this or change it to say, because my student was not able to read up to grade level sight words, this indicates to me that we will need to spend instructional time on it. Okay, for the qualitative spelling inventory. So again, my first sentence tells you what the assessment is. This assessment was given to determine my student's spelling stage. According to the assessment, my student was able to spell, and then you would go through and change this, whatever number it is. 26 would stay the same because that's the number of spelling words on the assessment. So you would change it to say this. I'm assuming that yours is probably going to be around like 5 to 10 words were spelled correctly, maybe more, but I don't know about that. The spelling, so you would keep this. The spelling stage indicated by my student's results showed that he fell at and then you're going to change this to whatever it actually is with your student. So remember, this is the record sheet that we use to determine the spelling stage, and it's one of these stages up at the top: emergent, letter name alphabetic, within word pattern, and so on. So if yours was letter name alphabetic, then you would just go and change it to say that. You also need to make sure that you go through and change pronouns, because if you have a female student, but the pronouns all throughout my template or my sample is he, just make sure you go in and change it to a she.
If there's multiple areas and within the spelling inventory or something, would you put all areas that they would work on, or just
I would just pick one, because, and the reason for that is because we don't have enough time in the instructional part to like go and speak to every part that they missed. So I would just pick the part that they scored the lowest on, up toward the beginning, I guess, and stick to that specific one. So remember, like within the patterns, you've got the specific topics where they struggle or could struggle with. So it could be short vowels, digraphs, blends, that kind of thing. I would just stick to that one area where they really show struggle and just do that as a goal. Okay. We could probably almost guarantee that this is going to be a goal for your student. We just don't know what the goal will be yet until you give the assessment and determine what he or she scored. So again, here it says this indicates that he struggles with long vowel patterns. This is one area of concern and will help my students' reading and spelling abilities if instructional time is spent on this area. I plan to incorporate long vowel instruction into our tutoring sessions. So what you'll need to do is you'll just need to go through again and change what your student actually struggle with because it's probably not going to be long vowel patterns. That's pretty far up on the chart. He may struggle with short vowels or final consonants or digraphs. So you just need to change it to fit your student. And I'm not saying that you absolutely have to make this an instructional goal, but if you do, you can say, I plan to incorporate blank instruction into our tutoring sessions, but when we go down here to writing our goals, you need to make sure that you have that as one of your goals. What I have seen in the past is students say that they're going to plan to work on long vowel patterns or digraphs or consonant sounds, and then I don't see it down here that they're working on it. Okay. So whatever you say up here, you've got to have it down here, which we're going to talk about here in a second. Okay. Is that making sense so far to everybody? Okay. And I actually have a place in the syllabus where we meet after one of your tutoring sessions, so I can refresh you on this before it's due, because, that's a while, but it's a month away and a lot's going to happen between now and then. So it may easily be forgotten. Okay. The next one is the ARI. So again, my first sentence tells me what the assessment is. So I say this assessment was given to determine the fluency and comprehension of my students' reading abilities. According to this assessment, my student was able to, and then you're going to change it to fit what your student was able to do. So remember, with the ARI, we give lots of different pieces to this assessment. We give, let me try to find it really quickly so we can look at it together. So we give the word list part of it first, but this is not anything that we need to talk about in the paragraph here, simply because this is only helping us to see what level we need to work with. Okay. So that's why none of the word list is talked about in the ARI paragraph. So this is one way that we're going to be able to figure out what's going on with our student, because this is telling us if our student can make predictions, if our student can retell, and if our student can summarize. Let's say, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, but let's say your student really struggles with retelling a story, then that's going to be an area of comprehension that that you can go ahead and focus on with your student. For example, in my instruction, maybe I do the 5-finger retell. You all know what the 5-finger retell is. It's like a, it's a graphic organizer too that they can use. So each finger stands for a story element that they can retell from the story. And basically you would do that over and over and over again until it's like, Miss Hawks, are we going to keep doing the 5-finger retell? Yes, we are. Yes. But basically your instruction, you're going to want it to be repetitive because you're trying to teach them a tool or a strategy or a skill that they will be able to go back and use it independently of you. That's the whole point of this class, is to identify an area or areas that they really need instructional help on, and you're trying super hard to work with them within the matter of weeks that you have with them to help them develop that strategy to use in the classroom. Yeah.
Each session be like, if they say the student needs to work on all 3 of those things, would one session be like based on sight words, or like, how was that?
That's a great question. And I'll show you that when we do the lesson plans. You're going to work on all 3 goals every single time you meet.
Okay.
That's a great question. Okay, so then another area that is going to help me figure out the data that I'm going to put in the ARI section is the fluency part, right? Because you're giving a running record. And so you want to be able to talk about that in this piece as well. And then the last piece to this assessment is the comprehension portion, about whether or not they can respond to the text or answer text-based questions. So that's where I'm getting those 3 pieces of paper, right? The fluency, the comprehension, and the page 154, that record sheet. this is where I'm getting my data to fill in that section. So let's read through it so I can at least give you an example of what it says. So again, this assessment was given to determine the fluency and comprehension of my students' reading abilities. According to this assessment, my student was able to accurately predict what the story would be about, read fluently, struggled with giving a clear retell of the story along with giving an accurate summary statement. He also struggled with the comprehension questions asked. Specifically, my student struggled with comprehension in the area of metacognition. So the reason why I chose metacognition here is because my student was struggling with he was struggling with trying to figure out the answers to the comprehension questions, which made me feel like he wasn't really thinking about what he was reading as he was reading, right? So that is an area. And remember, metacognition is what we learned back in teaching of reading, where we talked about thinking about your thinking, where we talked about those 7 specific comprehension strategies. We talked about metacognition, schema, which is all about background knowledge. We talked about questioning, inferencing, making predictions. We talked about visualizing, determining importance, determining what's the most important part of the story, which would identify with or not identify with, but correlate with summary. So if they can't write a summary, then that's helping you know that, well, they can't really determine what's the most important part of the story for them to be able to summarize it really quickly. Maybe retail would go with that as well. And then we also talked about synthesizing. So you are synthesizing what you're reading. You're able to put together what you know and what you've read about and make your own interpretations of the text. So they're able to respond to the text based on what they know and based on what they've read. Okay. So that's why I came up with metacognition again. And I know I've said this a lot already, but this is an area where you are going to use your professional judgment. I don't know your kiddo as well as you're going to know your kiddo. So that means that you are going to have to figure out, okay, what would be the best thing, or what would be the most important thing that would be the best piece to work on with my student? Because maybe your student struggled with fluency. They missed a ton of words, maybe are self-corrected so much that by the time they got to the comprehension questions, they had no idea what they were talking about. Maybe they just really struggle with something else. So you've got to be able to figure out and use your professional judgment. What do I really need to focus on in the next, I think you all are going to have we do 13 total sessions, but you all are probably only going to have 8 to 9 sessions by the time you get done assessing, where you're actually going to be able to drill in these instructional pieces. So really try to figure out what would be best. Okay, I'll keep going. It says it was noticed that he was not thinking about his thinking as he was reading. Therefore, he did not understand what the questions were asking. Focusing on teaching my student how to be a metacognitive thinker will allow him to focus on his thoughts as he reads text, which will help him make meaning from what he reads. Our future tutoring sessions will focus on working in the area of metacognition. So ideally, I like for us to have a sight word goal if we need it. I like for us to have a qualitative spelling inventory goal if we need it. And then I love for us to have a comprehension goal. However, since you only have 8 sessions with your student to be able to instruct, 3 goals may be too lofty. Okay, so I'm just going to say that up front. Maybe you only need 2 goals. So this is where we really get down to the nitty-gritty of working with our student. Okay, so the instructional goals is what all of our instruction will be focused on. So when I go to my lesson plan, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, when I go to teach the lesson plan, whatever I put in my action plan for the goals will need to be what's in my lesson plan. For example, I have here that I'm going to work on long vowel patterns, metacognition, and retell. Then when I go to my lesson plan, I shouldn't have sight word instruction, and I shouldn't have short vowel patterns, and I shouldn't have fluency, because that's not what any of my goals were. Does that make sense so far? Okay. So I also will say, and I wrote this, I made up the whole document. I will also say it's probably way too lofty to have 2 comprehension goals. Okay. For the amount of time that we're working with our student, I really would encourage you to only have 1 comprehension goal. Okay, so we've got our goals, and then part C just says, hey, suggest a focus for the next 4 weeks. So basically you would just say, we're going to be working on sight word practice. We'll be doing sight word drills or sight word instruction. We'll be working on long vowel patterns where I will incorporate words their way instruction. And then I'm going to use comprehension connections as a resource to help with the comprehension lessons or, comprehension pieces of my instruction. So basically you're just giving me like a very, very brief overview of how you're going to be doing, the next several weeks. Okay. It's just an idea of like what you have in mind for what you're going to do. This does not need to be super specific. It just needs to be like a broad overview of, hey, this is kind of what I'm planning. Okay. Any questions about the action plan? And again, we'll go over it later before it's due, but it's not due until March the 9th, which is a month from today. And I know this may look overwhelming right now, but once you get your data, you'll be able to go and say, oh, I can just go back in and plug in my pieces.
On the first day, we're giving these, or on the first tutoring session, we're giving these assessments. And then is that when we do the all about me?
Mhm.
Okay, how long do we usually do?
About 45 minutes. Yeah. So next week when we meet, I'm going to talk all about the first day. Yep. So we'll go over all of that just so that we can figure out what we're doing. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the folder that talks about the action plan, lesson plan, and then you'll upload your action plan there. So now I'm going to go to the lesson plans. The reason why you are creating only 2 lesson plans for this class and not a lesson plan every single time that you do a lesson with your student is because this is really just accountability. Maybe that's not the right word, but this is honestly just me being able to see that you can create a consecutive lesson plan. When you get into the 400 block, you are going to be creating a 3 to 5 day unit. Okay, that means you're going to pick a subject area and you're going to choose to teach 3 to 5 days in that subject area. That means that you're going to plan lesson plans that are consecutive. They flow from one to the next. You're not going to teach one thing one day and one thing the next in your unit. That's exactly how this class flows, is that your 2 lesson plans that I'm seeing, I'm looking to see if 1, you can create instruction for each of your goals that you mentioned in your action plan, but 2, can you make your instruction flow from lesson plan 1 to lesson plan 2? I'm not going to teach in my first lesson, my goals were long vowel patterns and retail. Let's just say it was those 2 for my action plan. Lesson plan 1 is not going to be all about long vowel patterns, and lesson plan 2 is not going to be all about retail. This is what you were asking about earlier. I'm going to have in lesson plan 1 long vowel pattern instruction and retail instruction. Day 2, I'm going to continue from day 1, long vowel pattern instruction and retail instruction. I'm just going to pick up from where I left off and keep on going. Okay, so that's what we're doing. You'll also notice that this lesson plan is very short, like it is not anything compared to what you are normally used to. And that's because it doesn't need to be. 1 is because you're already differentiating the lesson because you're only working one-on-one with the student. The second thing too is you're not really assessing the student because you already did that before. So there's no assessment piece in here. There's no accommodations that you're doing because again, it's a individualized lesson. So that's why I say that this lesson plan is only for this class because you can't use it for any of your other classes. All right, so you'll put your name, you'll create some type of lesson title. And then the baseline information, you're going to describe the assessment that you use to help determine instruction. So I'm going to go back to my example, and I'm doing long vowel pattern instruction and retail instruction. So what assessments did I use to help me figure that out? Well, I used the qualitative spelling inventory, and I used the what else? The ARI, the analytical reading inventory. So that's all I have to say there. I just want to know, and I want to know that where did I figure out that I needed this instruction? Did I just pull it out of my head, or did I really look at data and say, oh yeah.
Because we're doing 2 lesson plans and you said that you're just kind of looking for like consistency. Do we need to do these back to back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, they need to be back-to-back lesson plans. And remember, your first couple of days, your first few days of tutoring with your student, remember you're just creating those filler lessons because you will have extra time left over after you're done with the assessment. So you need to figure out, you know, pick a book and some activity that you could do with your kiddo that doesn't have to be goal related yet because you're not there yet. Okay. Okay, resources, identify the resources and assistance available to support your instruction and facilitate students' learning. So here, you're just going to list the resources that you use. Like if you're using a book, put a book title. If you're using some type of activity, tell me the activity's name and where you got it from. If you're using some type of instructional video, give me the link for it. Whatever you're using, you need to put that on here. And then lesson procedures, it's actually pretty short. You only have a content section and an application section. So basically what this means, you're listing the procedures for how you plan to teach it and how students are going to apply what you just taught. And this may be a we do type thing. This may not be, okay, they're going to work independently. This may be that you're doing an activity together, and that's completely okay. Notice here, I say if you have 2 goals, instructional plans for both goals should be indicated below. So maybe okay. So maybe here I say sight word and no, that wasn't one of my goals. I'm going to say long vowel instruction. And then I'll put my lesson procedures for my long vowel instruction here. Okay. So I may have, does that make sense? Step 2, whatever. I don't know why it keeps erasing. Okay. And then my next one is going to be retail instruction. So then I will do my retail instruction right there. So see how I'm doing both goals and my one lesson plan. And then when I go to my second lesson plan, it's going to be the same exact thing, except it's going to be for the next day. Okay. It may be repetitive and that's okay, but I need to see that you're able to plan from one day to the next. Something else that I want to mention here is that you need to do a lot of modeling. So before they go and apply what you have taught them, I need to see here that you're really modeling for them. So basically what that's going to look like is that you are going to show them first through your instruction and model for them what they're going to be doing later. So if you want them to be doing a graphic organizer later, then your lesson is going to involve you doing the graphic organizer, and then they can do it. You all can do it together later. Okay. Does that make sense? You may also long vowel instruction. There's a lot of resources online. If you look under Words Their Way, which is the program where this assessment comes from, we also have Words Their Way in the curriculum lab. You can go and find the book that you want and copy instruction from there and copy plans from there. But you need to make sure that whatever you're doing in your lesson, that you are showing for them, you're modeling for them. You're not just going to say, practice going over vowels A and E. Like, no, tell me like what you're going to do. How are like you need actually to need to see that. So your lesson plan along, I need that step need to teach it. Whatever book, I can't think of a book, step by step, how you plan to do